So new construction. I often have, I even have family members that are like, oh, the builder took care of it. And the building inspector came and the electrical inspector came. And so I don't know why I need to have this general inspector come.
Absolutely. That is a perfect, natural, and even a correct assumption. I fell into that too as a home inspector. I have to confess that when we were first doing home inspections, we were doing them only on existing houses. The first few times I was asked to do an inspection on a new house, it's like, I guess I shouldn't turn away the business. But when I was walking up the sidewalk, I was looking around, hoping nobody was seeing this because I felt guilty. I had the same perceptions as a home inspector. Like, what could possibly be wrong? It's a new house. It's a new box of crayons, right? Haven't all the code inspectors already been there? What I discovered, especially during that particular period when I was starting, was I was finding more issues of consequence to buyers in a brand new house than I was in a house of almost any other period.
Yep, I had that same new construction. I almost always have major problems, and it's not because the builder's bad.
Correct.
It's just life.
Mm-hmm. One of our inspectors that was with us for 12 years got hired away by a local builder as a superintendent. Now he sees a different perspective. What he's reflecting back to us is, my gosh, watching over house construction with all the different trades involved is kind of like herding cats. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff these people do. So as home inspectors, as realtors, and as consumers of houses, we don't see what goes on behind that curtain. But boy, it is hard. When you think about the tens of thousands of things that have to be put together right for the house to really survive an inspection, it's incredible. And yes, it's inspected by electrical inspectors, plumbing, mechanical, and building inspectors, all that. Wouldn't you think they would have found everything? No, because they are so overbooked, underpaid, they don't have time to hardly slow down when they look at the houses. And most people don't realize that code inspectors, bless their hearts, have no direct responsibility to the homeowner, only, or rather, general responsibility to the public. That's it. So you cannot sue City Hall if they've missed something. So that's why home inspectors go in representing the buyers. And boy, do we know it. Because when we're representing the buyers and they're paying a goodly sum for a home inspection, if we miss something that they felt we should have found, we hear about it really quick. So that keeps us on our toes. Code inspector's not the same way.
And sometimes the building inspector goes through first, and then the plumbing goes in, and they've cut all of the things that were important and to put the pipe in, and nobody goes back to check and make sure that it's still okay. And that's what we find. Those
Even
are the
though
kinds of things.
they might go back to check to see it, they still don't see it.
Right.
I've had superintendents say that when the house is almost all done and it's ready to close, they'll spend 15 minutes sitting on the throne in every bathroom, just looking around, because that's what the clients do. And in 15 minutes, they'll see something that they know is going to come up as a question later. So they actually spend time there. As home inspectors, we know that too. We can take a route through a house and have one route maybe 20 times. And on the 20th time, you'll see something you didn't see in the first 19. That's just the nature of the human mind, the way we see things. I didn't mean to scare anybody by saying, in most economies, a brand new house is going to have more issues of consequence to a buyer than a house of any other age. There's also a flip side to that. A house is tens of thousands of things that have to come together right. It's impossible to be perfect. So what happens if you're on a time curve? I'm going to do this for the audience. If you have imperfections this way or problems, and then this is time this way in a graph, it starts out really high and it goes really down low really quick, because during that warranty period in the first few months of ownership, you're going to find and fix almost everything you can find. So the incidence of issues drops really quick, very, very low. And then it stays very, very low for 5 to 7 years, and it starts creeping back up. The shape of that curve, if you will, if you could imagine that profile, in failure rate statistics, this is a science, that's called the bathtub curve. And that bathtub curve represents everything that man can make. It took me a long time as a home inspector to, gosh, houses are made by people, wouldn't they have a bathtub curve? So that suddenly explained why we have more issues of consequence on a brand new house than a house of any other age. But also, the flip side is, it's nice to know that a house that's 1 year old is probably going to have the lowest incidence of concerns to your prospective buyers for the next 5 years. That's nice to know.
Yeah, that is nice.
So I'm just trying to be as honest as possible.
So what are things buyers or sellers can do to keep their inspection things, like in the life of them owning the home? What are some common things that a seller could do every month, year, quarter? that you're like, when you walk in and you see they've done those, you're like, this is going to be great? Nothing. Okay.
No. I almost don't want to spend energy on that conversation.
Okay.
That's like a doctor. You go into a doctor and say, well, if you do this, this, and this every day, then I don't have to see anymore. How many patients actually do that?
Yeah.
So it's a moot point. If the sellers of the mindset and habit of maintaining their property, they will look for information to do that. They will pay for periodic maintenance. You can't change their personality. So there's nothing we can tell somebody through a podcast to say, well, sellers should do this or that. Because the sellers that aren't listening aren't going to listen.
Right.
And the sellers that want to listen, they're going to find information whether we tell them or not.
Okay.
Now, for years, I've been trying to sell the concept of having periodic inspections.
Yeah.
For a business, that'd be great. That'd be called continuity income.
Right, yeah.
I am part of a coaching group nationwide amongst home inspectors. We're all in that conversation. For the last 15 years, nobody's figured out how to do that. So that's why I say it's almost a moot point.
Well, if you had, I know I have in the past had a person buy a new construction home and we did the inspection, and then right before their warranty period is up, doing another home inspection.
Yes. We actually provide one free re-inspection with every one of our inspections. So if it's a new house, we suggest, hey, why don't you go ahead and wait for 11 months, and we'll do your free re-inspection at that time. At that point, the house has had a chance to settle and shrink enough that cracks may have developed that you might be concerned about. And as the owners, new owners, you have more information for having lived there 11 months than we're going to find in a couple of hours. So we'll take our information on that second inspection together with everything you can, and then we put that in a list and give it to the builder while you're still under warranty. If any builders out there listening and think, well, yeah, that's a fine strategy, thanks for that. Which brings me to another question around new construction. I think you get equal benefit out of either doing the inspection at the time the house is first built and you're buying it on new construction versus not even doing one up front, but waiting for the 11th month. Because you're going to find more in the 11th month, and you're still under warranty if you trust the builder. That's another question. So you get good bang for your buck out of either one. So if we do a full inspection at the front, then we promise to spend an hour out there at no cost, just helping you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about your company is the free re-inspection. Because I'm like, just build it into the cost. You know, I'm going to have you go back out and check to make sure they did it all, because I don't know what that looks like. And I don't trust the receipts, because there's all kinds of fraud going on with like, yeah, we did it. Here's a receipt from a furnace company.
Well, it's not even fraud.
Well, sometimes it is.
We could point out, say, 15 electrical issues. And then we don't know if or how that list ever gets to the actual electrician that comes out. So the electrician finds and fixes everything that he fixes probably very well because they're licensed. But maybe there's two out of that they just didn't get on the list or he didn't fix. So usually it's just the completion of the list. So when we set these up to help buyers and their agents know that when they're getting close to the closing table on any house, especially existing houses, that the receipts that we're getting back saying that, oh yeah, that this issue and this issue and this issue are taken care of, look, we paid for it, it must be done right. When we go out as interpreters and advocates for the buyer, we find that only a small percentage of those things are actually done in a way that the buyer expected. And that's out of human nature. That's because the seller's minds are already down the road.
Yeah.
They put the house on the market thinking this is how much equity we're going to be able to walk away with. And then it gets eaten away by little things that they ask them to fix. And it's like, man, let's keep that expense down as much as possible. So that's the seller's motivation. Not that they're trying to be honest. It's just their head's not in the same place. So we feel that having somebody that's familiar with the trades, familiar with that whole conversation and building science go out on your behalf for free just before you go to closing.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's some help.
I was going to ask you about something else. Do you have another question?
I'm just thinking about Uncle Harry, Al, and Bob and how they're not doing what they need to do.
What are questions somebody could ask a home inspector? So a buyer or an agent is thinking about picking a couple of home inspectors to have in their pocket for when they're buying a house or helping someone buy a house. What are questions? What are things that agents should be looking for in a home inspector?
Okay. There are certifications. To me, that doesn't mean anything.
Because we don't license. There's no standard.
There's no license or certification for
Right.
inspectors in the state of Idaho. We can belong to different professional organizations, but that doesn't mean we're good inspectors. That just means we paid our dues, maybe passed a few tests. Like an agent, you pass your licensing exam, now you can do real estate. Does
Right.
that make you a good realtor?
Of course. Just
Yes,
kidding.
immediately, yeah.
That's just teaching those classes, right?
Right. If I had me as an instructor. No, just kidding.
Yeah, there you go. So what I suggest to both agents and buyers, and I suggest that agents say this to their buyers: look, it's time for home inspection. We highly suggest that you look for a professional, not Uncle Harry, not Uncle Bob, but you get a professional. Here's how you might choose them. Go to their websites. If anybody that's on a list that you want to check out, look at their websites. Insist on seeing an example inspection report. Between the example inspection report and that price, the buyer is capable with that information of making a decision that fits them. Not every home inspector is going to be a fit for every buyer. It's kind of a personality.
Yeah.
Yes, but they can see that through the report, and that sets expectations. To me, the agent does not need to be in the negotiating conversation with the home inspector. Honestly, we do some home inspections at $400. We do some at $2,000. It depends on what the buyer wants, and we try really hard not to pressure sell. But when we're in conversation with buyers and find out what their past experience is, what it means to them, where are their fears, then we say, okay, this is the information we can give you, pick and choose. And usually end up some sort of a combination of what suits them. But something else I want to say to agents is, agents might have a home inspector they prefer. I've heard some agents say, oh, in the conversation, this is my favorite inspector. I would really urge you not to ever say that, because if you have a favorite inspector, then the eyes of your client, it might be, why is that inspector your favorite? Do they help you hold the deals together? Do they downplay some issues? Because you're immediately
Right,
suspect.
yeah.
Because of your high commissions, you're immediately suspect,
Right.
right? So I would suggest when an agent is talking about, we come to the point of the transaction where we need to think of inspection, you'd ask the buyers, do you have anybody? If it turns out to be Uncle Harry, we've talked about how to discourage that. But at some point, you're going to figuratively speak and say, here's at least 3 cards.
Yeah.
And you do that because your attorneys are saying you're going to avoid referral income through a conflict of interest.
Right.
So you let them choose. But on those 3 cards, here's the script I would suggest that you would use. Instead of saying this, here's my 3 favorite inspectors. Instead say, I'm going to give you the names of several inspectors who have served my clients well in the past. You see, that's customer centric, and it stays away from that conflict of interest. But as soon as you show them the card, so to speak, they can say which one's your favorite. Now, so the way you could probably get around that and still point them to your favorite is to put your favorite card on the top and then grimace and say, you know what, this one right here, I continue to recommend, even though they make my life so darn extremely difficult for all the information they bring to the table, but I'm willing to spend the time with you going over that. You see, again, that's customer centric. It avoids the hook of the conflict, and it elevates you and serves them.
Right.
So most everybody in real estate understands that scripts are very important.
Yep.
Those are the things that you learn to say more efficiently than you've ever said them before, so that when the subject comes up, you know your lines. And even if your client knows that those are rehearsed lines, the fact that you know so many of them, they fit so well, they still say, wow, this guy's more professional than I thought. They appreciate that. They know that you're handling them well.
And you could
But for
suggest
their
they go to the
benefit.
websites and
Yes.
check it out and give them more tools than
Right.
just here's 3 names.
Right.
Yeah.
But even if they heard of another inspector from somebody you didn't recommend, just smile and say, okay, whoever you're thinking of, go to their website, check that out, see how you feel about their services, but also be sure to look at an example inspection report and then make a decision. I had an agent a few years back when paper reports were more predominant. He'd say, I would make a notebook, and I would put 3 different inspection reports in that. And when it came time to, we had an accepted purchase offer, and now we need an inspection, he would hand him the notebook and say, choose one. And he said he would try his best to get home before the phone would ring and say which ones they chose. Because he already knew by putting in the notebook which ones they would choose. Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
But by that, he was taking price out of the conversation. He was saying, here's your choice of what you can get. If your choice is what do I want, then price is no longer the object.
Yeah, because you're getting the value that you need
Yeah.
and expect. Right?
It's all perceived by the way, this particular agent, we had a good relationship because he was my custom tailor for years. So as a gentleman who designed clothes and dressed, presidents and all of our legislators and attorneys and whatnot. He knew how to help people make decisions where cost wasn't part of the
equation.
Would fit their need.
Got you out of the white shirt.
Yeah,
he was your custom tailor.
He taught me how to do this, hopefully.
Yeah. So,
but I want to comment on the title of this podcast.
Okay.
What is awkward conversations in real estate?
Yeah.
And with that title, what do? You invite a home inspector. That's always the most awkward conversation, isn't it?
Well, I haven't seen your report yet.
We've had a variety of different people, and they're always fun conversations. I think when I use awkward, it makes it relaxing. Like, you don't have to be the perfect guest.
Well, it's also kind of like the conversations that are the elephant in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that you wouldn't normally talk about.
You can use the word authentic as well.
Well, and I always, because one of ours we did, I couldn't get both cameras working, and it kept saying things like it's not recording. And the girl, because there were three of us, so we had to like sit really close, but I was getting in her personal space, so she's like moving across.
So pretty quick, you're the screen she's
half of her was in. But actually that, on social media, that podcast had the most views. Yeah. That little snippet, because I think the topic was entertaining and it looked imperfect.
Absolutely.
It's not, we're not
perfect.
Perfect.
We're perfect for this.
We are perfect for this.
But not
perfection. And then awkward conversations can always evolve to be more professional setup than what we've got going on here. But
well, for all the fun we've had, I hope that we've covered some of the questions.
I think it's been
that your audience would be interested.
I haven't ever been in one of your classes, but I know you do teach quite a bit, and to me, this has been very informative. From the perspective of not knowing a lot of it, because I'm not on that part of it. The only time we really deal with inspection reports is not the report itself, but just what needs to be completed or paid for through closing, right? Or be done before closing takes place, or an invoice that we're paying through a transaction. Really, that's all that we're dealing with on that part. Because once it's to that piece of it, it's like, okay, we're ready to get this finished up.
Well, speaking of which, traditionally home inspectors have not liked putting their fees off until closing. Our professional organizations have seen that as a possible conflict of interest, because if we're putting our fee off till closing, then that puts us in a position of hoping there's going to be a closing. Let's do everything we can to make sure there's a closing. So keep our mouths shut, downplay things. That creates a conflict of interest. But we've gotten away from that two ways. We can actually have pay at close for people who say, the cost of a home inspection is uncomfortable for me now, to be more comfortable at closing. We can do that now. We do that through a separate finance company. It only adds $50, but we pay that. We absorb that. So that's a choice for anybody. But that company did not like doing that same put off until later type payment on listing inspections or pre-listing inspections. So now we've developed our own system on that. So that would allow you as an agent to say, I believe this is important. Let's get it done. Let's arrange for it. We can arrange for payment when there's money on the table.
Yeah.
So we're working with that. So I just want to let you know that's a possibility.
That's cool. So a couple things that you do. One of them I've noticed is when you ask somebody for inspection, you ask for the extra services, and one of them is a radon inspection, and one, I don't remember what the other one is. Sewer pipe.
Sewer scope.
Scope. So talk about those two. Who would need those, and when are they the most important? Or maybe it's your secret sauce, so you don't want to tell that. But.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think very quickly on radon, the Surgeon General of the United States has been saying for more than 20 years to everybody, and Idaho's always the last to listen, and we're proud of it.
We are the last to listen.
That says that radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer, second only to cigarette smoking. And the statistics and science has proven that deaths due to lung cancer from radon alone, separate from cigarette smoking, amount to about 22,000 per year nationally. So that's worth knowing about. So the EPA just simply said if it's above a certain level, it probably makes sense to spend some money to mitigate it and lower it. There's no such thing as no radon. It's just trying to keep the chances of cancer as small as possible by not exposing yourself to higher.
And Idaho tends to have pockets of the state that have higher radon than others?
Not so much. It depends on stuff going on underground that we can't even see. So you can have a house right here in a neighborhood surrounded by other houses, and this has high radon, the other ones have low. These are all high, and that house is low. It's almost inexplicable. So the moral of the story is you have to measure to know. But we're not trying to say that radon is something everybody should lose sleep over. It just makes sense to spend maybe a couple $1,000s to lower it if your children are going to be exposed to high radon levels in their bedrooms where they're spending 12 hours a day. That's all. It's kind of like the decisions of, I'm buying a house on a busy street and I've got a 3-year-old boy. Should I build a fence? Okay. And the next question is, well, how high should I build the fence? You see what I'm saying? So the first question of radon is, do I want to measure it? The second question is, or if it's high, how much do I want to pay to lower it? So that's the radon question.
Okay.
And if you like, I can give you a radon information acknowledgement form. I'll give you digital copies, anybody who wants it, which just fits on one page, which is less than I taught. And actually, that was written in concert with the state of Idaho.
Okay.
To help educate the real estate community. And it's a conversation you can quickly have with buyers when it's at the right time to know. Let them initial at the bottom since you've had the conversation. That way everybody remembers the conversation.
Right.
But then the next one you asked about sewer scope. Yep. We jokingly call those house endoscopies. I didn't say a dirty word. So the sewer lines that go, sewer service lines from a house to get everything you put down the toilet safely into the public collection system, those are your sewer service lines. Those can fail. And if they do, they could easily be $25,000, $30,000 to either repair or replace. That's a surprise nobody wants. Yet when you're in the house and flushing stuff down the toilet, unless there's a blockage right now, you don't know, is that going to happen tomorrow? Murphy's Law says that because people moving out of a house are going to clean it to some extent for the approaching buyers, and they're usually going to have Aunt Harriet and Uncle Harry help them. And sometimes they're so helpful and they have all these big cleaning towels, flush them down the toilet, that's going to contribute to anything that might block it. And of course, that cleaning is never as good enough as it needs to be for the people to move in. They do the same thing with all their helpers, and then we all get a call a couple of days after they moved in. Why didn't you tell us that the sewer was plugged? Who's going to do this? Something about it. It's like the only way we would know is if we actually put a camera down there to see the offsets, the cracks, the bellies, the roots coming into the sewer. So because of the types of sewer lines that were installed from time immemorial up to probably 1970, those materials would crack, break, let roots in. The water that leaks out of them attracts tree roots. That's the major cause. So for sure, get a sewer scope done. And we do them, and we do them without conflict of interest. Sometimes the plumbing companies, they're trying to sell.
Yes.
In fact, sometimes they'll charge less than we do, but that's a loss leader just trying to get their foot in the door. We've actually seen them show videos of somebody else's sewer in order to sell on this one.
No.
Yeah, honestly, again, we can't mention names, but I've seen that a couple times. But we do suggest that. Now, the funny thing is then, well, okay, that's a good reason to do pre-1970s sewer lines. Not pre-78 like the lead are supposed to, but pre-70s. And by the way, I used to be the city inspector in the city of Clarkson up in northern Idaho just for that, for those sewer lines going in. So I've seen all the mistakes they make. But even today, the same mistakes are being made. Because when you think of men working on a hot day in a deep trench with rocks and dirt falling down there and trying to put together pipe at a perfect grade at a 1/4 inch per foot slope in a straight line. On new construction, our video scopes will often see rocks this big at every darn joint because there's rocks that fall in line that shove the pipes together. They don't even bother pulling the rocks out of the pipe.
Oh.
So,
because they're not engineers.
Yeah.
They're pipe fitters.
Oh, I get it. My notary stamp is not always at a 90-degree angle. So,
all right.
There's times I just don't want to be perfect on everything.
Yeah. And you're not even working under the duress.
I'm not in the heat. Yeah. Well, sometimes there's deadlines, but that's not the
Yeah.
But you're in an air-conditioned room.
Yeah. Standing at my desk.
But then other services people may want to know about is mold.
Yep.
Mold and air quality, we do those.
Uh-huh.
And we especially suggest that agents would ask their clients, do you know of anyone in your family or people who are going to spend much time in the house that has mold allergies or has allergic reactions to anything? if that's the case, get this done. And sometimes, quite frankly, we would suggest if you've got those allergies, spend some time in the house, because people's bodies are better than any machine we could ever buy.
Yeah.
It's the canary in the cage. Spend some time in the house if you're worried about that, and the house will tell you. So you don't have to pay us always to find that. So when people are buying houses with private wells, you're wondering, well, do we get enough water from the well? Is it clean enough to drink? So those are your potability tests.
Do you do those too?
Yes. And we do productivity tests. Can the well produce enough water? So there are a lot of ancillary services depending on. So what we do is we simply try to have these conversations through the phone call or emails that go out, so they're aware of what we can do. And if it matters to them, we explain why it would or not. Then they can call us back and say, "Hey, would you add this or that?" So we're seeing a lot more of that.
And what about septic?
We don't do septic inspections. We do what they call flow tests, which means that on a private well that has its own septic, we're actually letting water come through the house, down the drains, and we see how the toilets flush when we first start it, and then after running maybe 250, 300 gallons through the system, we go back and flush the toilets again. Hopefully by that time nothing's backing up. There's no suspiciously wet spots in the yard around the drain field, or a lot of really green vegetation. So that's a flow test. But the actual septic inspection, that's done by the contractors we refer to as honey dippers. Well, they'll actually go and dig up, usually this far below the ground. There's a septic lid. They pull that. They'll look at the condition of the inlet and outlet baffles, how much of a solid cap there is on the top and sinking cap. They pull all those solids out, because if the cap gets too deep and the sinking solids get too tall, then there's not much gray water or liquid in between to go out in the drain field. That increases velocity and starts picking up some of those particles and just plugging at the drain field. Then you have to rebuild that. So between the septic contractors and us, those two tests fit together, because we don't have the time for a flow test, and we don't have the equipment or the muscles to lift those lids.
And then you also provide service providers. Not every inspector does that. So, and I love
You
that.
like that?
Yeah, because it's not me recommending them. It's according to you.
I'm glad you like that. That started, Elizabeth. Years ago, we would be finding problems in the house, and then somebody, the buyer, maybe the agent, well, who do you know that might be able to fix that? Who can you recommend? And I'm thinking, this feels a lot like there's a problem. Here's Cousin Vinny's card. There's another problem. Uncle Bob does this. It's like that's a conflict of interest.
Right.
So I first got in the habit of saying, all right, now that we're out of earshot from the clients, if you really want to know, I would recommend these people. So now it's coming from you to them. So finally, we just realized, wait a minute, if we put out a list and had a preamble on the list that says, here's how we manage it. Now that list says something like, here's a list of tradesmen, service providers that we feel are customer-centric. We cannot guarantee their work, nor do we charge them anything to be put on the list. The only way they stay on the list is your feedback. So if you pick somebody to serve you, please let us know how they did. So that preamble sets the expectations.
Yep.
We should be making 10% of everything that those people do, because we're doing the advertising for them.
Yep.
But I've stayed away from that.
Yeah. I think it's smart to stay away from that, because it creates that
Conflict.
conflict.
Appearance of a conflict of interest.
And
So that list is over 300.
it's a big list.
300, I think it's
It's one of my
people.
favorite things. So when someone doesn't pick you, I'm like,
Well, I'll tell you what. If you're serving somebody who doesn't pick us and just don't want that service provider list, call us up and we'll give it to
okay,
you.
thank you.
Good. That's what it is. It's a service provider list. And by the way, that list ends up changing sometimes twice a month, because when we get feedback, people that we thought were customer-centric, maybe we sent them so much business they start treating our referrals like stepchildren. I don't know, but they come off the list. And they can't buy them their way onto the list.
Yeah, that's good.
So think of it kind of as Angie's list, the way she first started way back in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And then the big people started seeing, the investors started seeing the value of that list, and they've totally prostituted it now.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that trusts Angie's list right now. I hate to say anything negative about others, but as soon as you realize that a list, that all the people that look the best on it, just like, oh, they bought the biggest spot in the elevator, just like,
No.
okay, that loses credibility on service.
No, I was at a brokerage once, and we'd send emails out that said, who do you trust for this? And it could be horseback riding lessons.
Yeah.
And they went on the list, and it got updated. And then if somebody had bad feedback, or we would say, yeah, if you're going to use them for a high-end property, this is probably not the right person because their quality maybe wasn't great. And I always thought that feedback was really valuable.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed this, Elizabeth, on the list we've got all these little category headings like the yellow pages would have.
Right.
All those headings are in alphabetical order, but when you look in the list on the listings in there, they're not in alphabetical order. They're at the ones that we would hire for our own family first. Those are the ones you call first.
Oh, interesting.
And the ones we just newly added to the list and haven't
Now, if I'm on the bottom of the list, I know.
well, either it means you're too new, you haven't had a chance to really prove yourself yet.
Yeah.
But we have to be impressed with somebody to even put them on the list.
Yeah. Good.
Sometimes it's just with their conversation and they prove out to not walk the talk.
Well, we've had a long conversation with you. Thank you very much.
This has been fun for me.
Oh, it's a blast. Every time I do one of these, I'm like, we should do more.
And you're going to.
And we are. We have a lot scheduled.
We do. We scheduled, what, 7 or 8?
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago.
So I said we had to get to
She
10.
is the pioneer for it. I'm just kind of like hitching my wagon to it. So.
Well, you should be in the conversation.
He thinks of some questions sometimes, and he has the quirky, awkward part.
Yeah.
Not awkward. I'm the awkward part. He's
quirky sometimes.